project. Okay. One of the first things, oh, by the way, hi everyone, it's Lucy here. My colleague Ali is here and she is going to be recording this session so we can put it up on our YouTube channel. So today we're just going to be having a look at Microsoft Project. And look, a lot of people get quite confused when they first start to use Project and they get pretty frustrated. It can be a very frustrating tool to use if you have not had some, to be frank, had some proper training. And that's because it looks like Excel, but it does not behave like Excel. And if you try and treat it like Excel, you are just heading towards a whole heap of pain. In fact, if you have some very simple needs, then in scheduling, then I would suggest that you use Excel rather than using Project. Project is based on a scheduling engine, and you need to understand the scheduling engine in order to be able to understand what Project is doing. Once you understand what Project is doing, it's a really great tool. It can do some pretty complex stuff. It can manage really massive projects. It can do all of your resourcing. It can actually do costings as well. But that's really down the advanced scale, if you like. So starting off with our basics, your default view when you come in is your Gantt chart view. So you can see here I've got my Gantt chart view that's showing. So my Gantt chart essentially is a list of my tasks and then a pretty picture over here of my Gantt chart. I have a little button here that just clicks on to say zoom to entire project. That's actually on the view menu. So here it is, zoom to entire project. I just right clicked on that and added to my quick access toolbar because I use it a lot. Okay, so that shows me my entire project there. Now, this is what we call a task view. So your schedule is made up of tasks, resources, and when we link those together, assignments. So many people think that a task is the most granular level of your project, but a task is not the most granular level of a project. The most granular level is actually an assignment. So if you think about it, you could have a task that has multiple resources on it. So I may say that we are writing a marketing plan, for example, and that particular task I've got 3 different people working on. I've got one person working on it full time, one person who's just a bit of an expert who's just going to give us a little bit of advice, so they only may be working on it say 20% of the time, and I might have somebody who's doing some admin around it and they're spending half their time on it. So I've got 3 assignments rather than just an individual task. Some people, when they do that, they prefer to just break those up into 3 tasks. And then have the resources on each of those tasks, and therefore they've only got 1 assignment per task. But it's a really important distinction, is I've got tasks here. If I go to my view and I go to my resource sheet, I've got resources here, and at the moment I have no assignments. I've not linked any of these resources to any of these tasks. So we'll have a look at assignments a little bit later on, but that's one of my top tips for you, is to understand that tasks is not your most granular level. Okay. Another thing I see people do quite a lot is they put their task 1 here. So all the tasks have an ID. That's what these numbers down here are. All the tasks have these IDs, a task ID. And I see them with their task ID is their task number 1 is the name of their project. Now you don't actually need to do that. If you go to the Gantt Chart Tools format menu, you'll find here is a thing called the project summary task. And if I click on that, I then get a task 0. And my task 0 is the name of my project. So you see it's called my lovely webinar project. So that's the task name here. It's my lovely webinar project. And your task 0 is really great because it's a summary of your entire project. You can see that I've got my duration here, which is the duration of the entire project. And I've got the start and finish date of the whole project as well. Okay. So that is really useful to have turned on. For some reason it's in the Gantt Chart Tools format menu. I've got no idea why. It's really got nothing to do with your Gantt chart, but hey, there's Microsoft for you. Okay. So what I've got here as well, you'll notice that some of these tasks are dark. That's because they are summary. So these are summary tasks, these ones here. So I've got a phase 1, and under that I've got some tasks, and then I've got a phase 1 complete, and then I've got my phase 2. So I've made that into a summary task. All I did there, let me unmake it into a summary task. So all I did was I took these tasks that are underneath it, and I use this button here, which is to indent them. Okay, so essentially these become subtasks of this summary task, and that automatically bolds it, and it automatically adds up the number of days below it. Okay, that's slightly more complex than that, but the reason it's adding those ones up is because I've got a classic finish to start dependency on those. Okay, so that entire phase is going to take 20 days. If I change task 1 to taking 10 days, it updates that one there to saying it's now 25 days. You'll notice that my task 0 has also updated. In fact, you may be able to see anywhere that's turned blue has been affected by what I just did. Okay, so if I go back to changing that into 5 days, okay, and then I come down here and change this down here into 10 days, you'll notice it doesn't affect all of these, it just affects the ones below. So these are just slightly bluer. Okay, all right. Now, important things when we're talking about summary tasks as well is whatever you do, do not change the duration of your summary task. Okay, so never change the duration of your summary task. In fact, summary tasks are exactly that. They are a summary of what's below it. Please do not change anything about them. Don't change the start and finish dates. Don't change the duration. Don't add resources to them. Leave them alone. Do not use them as predecessors or successors either. So predecessors and successors are how we link tasks up. So for example, I've got here that task 1A is a predecessor to task 1B. You'll see that on my Gantt chart, that task 1A has to finish before task 1B can start. So please do not add those into your summary tasks. If you use a summary task as a predecessor or a successor, you could end up with a illogical loop, and then it will not be able to open your project, and project will throw lots of nasty error messages at you. So don't do that. So that's pretty much a summary task. I can also just collapse these here. So I can collapse those, and that just then so it shows me sort of a summary. I can do that in one shot as well by looking at my outlines and saying that I want my outline level 1, or I can say I want to see all subtasks. Okay. Okay. Now, other things that I have here, oh, you'll notice as well the summary tasks look different on my Gantt chart. Okay. And then I've got my tasks, then I've got my links between my tasks, and then I've got these other ones here, and that is a milestone. Okay. So what defines a milestone is that it has a duration of 0 days. Okay, so that's how you create a milestone. Is all I do is I need to change it to being 0 days. Okay, and that automatically knows that it's a milestone. All right. When we talk about linking as well, okay, so let's just move on to this linking that I've done here. You'll notice I've got my column here of predecessors. So I can see here that my task 1B, its predecessor is task ID 2, which is my task 1A. Okay, so I can link tasks just by typing the number in the predecessor column. I can highlight them both, and I can go to my task tab and I can click on this link button. You can see there's also a keyboard shortcut, which is Control F2. Okay, so I can start to link up my tasks as well. The default one is a, as you can see here, if I come in here and if I double click on that, it's going to say me it's a finish to start, CFS. So there are 4 different types you can have: finish to start, finish to finish, start to start, and start to finish. Finish to start is your classic, is your normal one. So that means I must finish task 1A before I can start task 1B. Okay, so this is classic waterfall stuff. The start to start means that these tasks can start at the same time, and finish to finish will schedule them to finish at the same time. Okay, I won't go into too much more around that. Okay, all right. What else do we need to know on this one? Okay. I've also got my duration here. So I've just made all of these 5 days. That is just when you first add a task in, it will have a question mark. And that question mark just means that it is currently an estimate. If I want to say that this is an estimate, I can do. Let me just double click on my task 1A. Double clicking on my task 1A opens up my task information. Now, you can see from this, this is just task information. Remember, there are tasks, there are resources, there are assignments. So these information boxes, there are ones for tasks, ones for resources, and ones for assignments. So you can see here that there is actually quite a lot of stuff going on. So that's why I'm saying that it may look like Excel. It's not Excel, okay? There's a lot going on here. So we can see here that I've got my name of my task, I've got my duration. If I just click estimated, I then get a question mark. Okay? And that can be quite handy because I have a pre-built filter to look for just tasks that have been estimated. So if you're still trying to, at the beginning of your project, you're still estimating some things, you need to get some more information before you can actually commit to how long you think that task is going to take, then that's a really handy one. And if I go to my view, I can do things here like I can highlight tasks with estimated durations. Okay, so that's why that can be quite handy. And this is a time where I can also tell you one of my top tips about project, and that is there's a column for that. Okay, so pretty much everything has its own column. So you see at the moment I'm looking at this particular table here, which has got columns of task name, duration, start, finish, predecessor, and resource name. If I right click on one of these, I can say insert column. Okay, these are all of the columns. There's quite a few. Yeah. So there's loads of information being stored about tasks, resources, and assignments. If I want to find a particular column, I can just start typing its name and I'll get taken there. So I happen to know that there is a column for estimated. So that one is a yes. Again, I can turn. So this is just the same. It's just the equivalent of ticking that box. It's just that there's another way to get to it. So I can see that these ones are estimated here. And this does also mean I can come in, I can change it, and I can copy that down, say that no, they aren't estimated. Okay. Now, once I've got a column in there, if I don't want it anymore, I can just hide that column. It does not delete the information in it, it just hides it. Okay, so, and we'll talk about views, and I'll talk about these columns in a bit more detail a bit later on. Okay. All right, so with my project now, what I've done is I've created my task list, I've created my summary task by indenting, I've linked my tasks up, I've created my milestones, and I've done my estimates of my durations, so I've put all my durations in there. The next thing that I want to do is to add in my resources, okay? So we're going to go to a different view now. We're going to go into a resource view. So from my view menu, I just pick resource sheet. And I have got these resources just by typing them in. Okay. If you were working with Project Server, you would have a resource pool. You would go to Project Server and you would get those from there. But I don't think anybody here is doing that at the moment. So my resource names, I can just type them in. So if I want to add in my, I can type in my surname and it'll add it in there. I can change my initials and so on. I've got my resource types here. So there are work, material, and costs. I'm not going to get stuck into that today because the only reason you'll be using things other than work resources is if you're actually trying to cost your project, which, as I say, is in the advanced class, is actually costing a project using MS Project. So I'm not going to get into that today. There's lots of good material on the internet if you are interested in exploring project a little bit further. But for now, we'll stick with work resources. So work resource is just a resource that's going to do the work. So if you consider a task as being a thing that needs to get done, then a work resource is the resource that's going to do that work. Okay, it's going to be the thing that does the stuff that needs to get the task done. Oh, I'm in good explaining mode today, aren't I? But that's essentially a work resource. Okay. Again, I can have things like standard rates, overtime rates, a cost per use, and accrue at. Again, that's all about costing your project. So let's not worry about that too much. I've got here the base, that's their calendar. So what kind of calendar do they work on? We'll just leave that as a standard calendar. So your standard calendar is 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. Okay, so that's a base calendar. You can change that. So for example, if you've got people who only work Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or that you do shift work or things like that, you can set up calendars. You can either set them up on an individual resource, or you can set them up within the project, within the whole project, and you can assign different people to different calendars. What happens then is, let's say I've got a task that's due to take a week. If I assign it to a resource who only works 3 days a week, the duration of that task will change because that person can only work on it 3 days a week. So if the task's going to take them 5 days to do, that's actually going to take them 2 weeks. I'll just let that sink in for a moment. All right. Okay, so another way that you could manage that is through the maximum units. So that's just if you say, this person works 3 days a week, it doesn't matter to me which days it is, I just need to know that they're working 60%. Because if you consider that a day is 20% of somebody's time, so 1 day equals 20% of somebody's time. If you think about this 5 days in a week, 100% is a full-time equivalent. So that's 5 days in a week. So 1 day is 20%. So if I say Lucy works 3 days, I could either give her a calendar that says specifically which day she works, or I could say she works at a maximum of 60%. Depends how accurate you need to be with your schedule. And again, I don't want to start baffling you too much with that. So I'm going to step away from that right now. Okay. All right, so let's just go back to my, I don't think there's anything else really I need to see here, from here, other than, again, if I open this up, as I say, I have got resource information. So remember before we saw all those tabs for task information, I have lots of them here in my resource information as well. And again, I don't want to go into this too much, but just know there's lots of different things here. So yeah, I'm not going to get into cost tables and so on. The resource availability can be quite useful though. So let's say that I'm only going to get Lucy onto my project. Lucy's finishing up on another project at the moment, and I know I'm not going to get her until halfway through August. I can actually put in here that she's not available. My project starts on the 1st of August, but Lucy isn't actually available until the 22nd, for example. So that's something that I can do through this. And again, project then will change tasks that she's assigned to due to that. All right. Let's go back though to I'm going to go to my Gantt chart view, back to my task view. So from here, I can add in my resources. So lots of different ways to do this. Simplest way is I click on my resources. I've got a list of all of my resources here, and then I can just assign my resource by ticking them. Okay. And I can come in here and I can assign a couple of people to that one, for example. Okay. Another way to do that is I can double click on a task and I can come into resources and I can pick it in here. Now this one is more useful if I'm actually going to then be managing the assignment level information. I'll get onto that in a minute. Okay, so that's how I then assign resources. I'm just taking a deep breath. I'm thinking, which way are we going to go next? Let's talk about work. Okay, I'm just going to insert a column into here. This is work. All right. So, what is the difference between duration and work, or duration and effort? Okay, so work is sometimes called effort. Duration is the length of time a task is going to take. Work is the amount of man hours, the amount of effort somebody needs to put in to complete that task. So why are duration and effort different? Well, let's say you come to me today and you say, Lucy, we would like you to put together a training program. So we'd like to put together a training program for this team of people, and this is the outcomes that they want. You know, they want to learn some stuff about Excel, and here are the outcomes. And I may say to you, yeah, that's great. I'll get that to you in a week's time. Now, I might know that to put that plan together will take me half a day, let's say. So let's say I'm going to spend half a day putting that plan together, but I can't deliver that because I've got other things I need to do. Okay, so that's why the duration and the effort may be different. So I might say it's going to take me 5 days duration, despite the fact that it's 4 hours of effort. And that's because I'm going to work on it 10% of the time. Okay. So there is this link between work duration and FTE, so percentage. So the percentage of time, that units. So units is the percentage of time someone's going to work on something. Excuse me. So yeah, units is the percentage of time someone's actually going to work on something. So if I'm going to spend half my time on something, then that's my units would be 50%. And I would get half of the work done in the duration. So if I can get 40 hours worth of work done in 5 days duration, if I only spent 50% of my time on it, then I will only get 20 hours of effort of work done in 5 days. So again, the work duration units is a really big factor in your scheduling engine. It's a really big thing within project. But that again, it depends how far down you're trying to measure, what you're trying to get out of your project. So if you're trying to do costing, you have to work with work duration units. If you're just trying to do a timeline, duration will work for you. You don't need to worry about work. Okay. All right, it's a big concept as part of this scheduling engine. It's a big concept in scheduling generally. It's something I should have said at the beginning as well. I'm talking to you about using Microsoft Project, but essentially I'm talking to you about scheduling. And scheduling is scheduling is scheduling, whether you do it on a piece of paper, whether you do it in an online tool, whether you do it in MS Project, whether you do it in whatever, however you go about doing it, scheduling is scheduling is scheduling. So that work duration units is not, it's not related to MS Project, it's related to scheduling, okay? So that's work duration units. I'm going to hide the work for now. Okay. All right, so we have been looking at tasks, we've looked at resources. I did mention there's another thing, which is assignments. So we have this view here is about task view. We went in and we had a look at the resource view. We also have assignment level views as well. So these are these ones that are called usage. So I've got resource usage and I've got task usage, okay? So resource usage and task usage. Let's go into my task usage. All right, I'm just going to click on this one and I'm just going to use this button here, which I use a lot, which is scroll to task. And this is on the task menu, I think. Yeah, there it is, scroll to task. This just takes me to a particular task, whichever kind of view I'm in. Okay, so I can see here, I've got my task 1A and I've got Nigel doing 40 hours and it's split that over the week. So I'm now looking at a usage level. So I'm looking at an assignment level. Remember, so the task is at the top and then I've got assignments. So this task 1B, for example, I've got here the total of 80 hours work and it's split between Rosie and Martin. So I can see I've then got assignments. So that's task level, this is assignment level. And again, if I double click, on this, if I double click on this, I come into assignment information. So here I've now got information about my assignments. So I've got some general information, I've got some tracking and notes. Yeah, I'm not going to get into too much detail because again, it really depends on how much detail you want to go into, but hopefully you're seeing how powerful this can be. This is one of my favorite things. I'm just going to show you this because I love it. This is a work contour. So let's say that Rosie's going to do 40 hours worth of work, but we know that this particular task is a backloaded task. So what that means is that, you know, the task starts off and you just potter about doing a few bits and bobs, but then as the task goes on, you end up doing lots more work at the end. Or a front-loaded one, you know, there's lots of work at the beginning and then there's not so much later on. So actually this can sort that out for you. You see how it's gone as working full time to start with, and then she tails off in how much work she's actually doing as it goes on. And I get a little sign there saying that. Okay, I don't want to scare the horses, but I love that. Anyway, I'm being geeky. Let me go back to my Gantt chart view. So that's an assignment level view. Okay, all right. So that's tasks, resources, assignments. Once I've added all of my resources in as well, probably one of the things that I want to do is I want to baseline my project. Okay, so baselining your project is essentially taking a snapshot of your project at a particular point in time so that you can track. Excuse me, I'm just going to take a sip of water. Sorry, a bit of a frog in my throat there. Yeah, so you baseline a project so that you can track against it. So when you first do set up your schedule at the very beginning, you go, right, this is what I think I'm going to do. You baseline it, and then as your project moves forward and as you track what's happening in your project and you start to say, yes, this task is complete, this task took longer, this task took less time, you've actually got something to compare it to. So that when you get to the end of the project, you can do some analysis and you can see and you can report on your project as you go through your project and say, yes, we're tracking well, no, we've fallen behind, we need to re-baseline, you know, we need to rethink, we need to agree. You know, we need to throw more money or throw more resources at it. We need to agree a new deadline, or we need to de-scope. Okay, that's the scheduling triangle. You've got money or resources, you've got time, and you've got scope. If one of those changes, you need to change one of the other ones as well. Okay, all right. So to baseline the project, I go to, well, it's a while since I've done this. I go to project, set baseline, okay? And I click set baseline, and it's set baseline, baseline, entire project, okay. There you go, I've just set a baseline. So you might think that doesn't look any different, but if I go to my view, and I go to my tracking Gantt, you'll see I now have a baseline, okay? So this black line here is my baseline. That's what I said I was going to do. If I come into here and, for example, the duration of something changes, and that one goes down to that one goes up to 6, and this one comes down to 3, you'll see here that I've got my baseline, which is those black lines there, and then I've got my red lines here, which is that's my current forecast. Okay. So that's why baselines are really useful. Let me just undo all of that so I can go back and you can see there's my baseline. So it's important that you baseline your project so that you can track against how well you were doing. So as I say, that's just on the project tab. It's project, set baseline, set baseline, set baseline, baseline, okay. Just so you know, there are actually 11 baselines. Baseline 0, the baseline with no number, is the baseline that is in your that's showing in the tracking Gantt. That's a baseline that project uses to report against. These other baselines can be used to make backup of previous baselines. So let's say your project is going on for a while, there's a scope change or something along those lines, but essentially you have an agreed change with the project stakeholders and everyone's happy. You can re-baseline your project, but you don't lose your original baseline. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about that for now. All right. And I should just say to you, by the way, that when I used to train project managers on all this kind of basic stuff that I'm showing you now, it was a 2 or 3 day course. So that's why I'm kind of going, what should I include and what should I not include in this 1 hour webinar? So that's why I'm saying to you there's a lot of stuff. I'm just trying to get some concepts into your head so you can go away and investigate them on your own. All right, so baselining is really important. Let's just go back to my Gantt chart view. And other great tips I have for you. Okay, so one of my absolute total and utter 100% best tips for you is deadlines. So deadlines are a thing that not many people know about, and they are so useful. So lots of people, instead of using deadlines, they use constraints. And my advice to you is to use constraints as little as possible. I'll talk to you about constraints in a moment, but let me talk to you about deadlines. So let's say that this phase 2, I've got another project that's dependent on my phase 2 being completed. And I know that my phase 2 has to be completed by the end of October, by the end of September. Okay, so I know that needs to be complete by the end of September. Rather than going in and messing about with this finish date, what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on phase 2. I'm going to go into my advanced, and here I've got this deadline, okay? So I'm going to come into my deadline. I'm going to say I must finish this by the end of September, okay? And I'm going to say okay. Now what happens is I get, can you see that? I've got a tiny little green blob, okay? So I've got a little green blob just there, and that shows me my deadline, that I've got a deadline. But more importantly, let's say my project is now tracking along, and this is now taking 8 days, and then this one is going to take 7 days, and so on. And then this one is going to take 8 days, and we go on. Oh, can you see? Can you see what happened there? I've now got a little thing here that says this task goes past its deadline, okay? And we can see here my task has gone past its deadline. Now, the advantage of using this deadline is, did you notice that project was still able to schedule? So project just carried on doing what project loves to do, which is schedule for you, which means that you can do what you love to do, which is manage your project. So now that I can see that this deadline, I'm going to miss it, I've still got over a month to sort that out. So I've got a month to get myself, get my project back on track. And again, I can either agree a new deadline, I can throw more resources at it, or I can de-scope, okay? So that's why I absolutely love deadlines, because they are these little visual warnings for you. And guess what? There's a column for that. Okay, so there is a deadline column as well. So I can see I've got my deadline there. Okay, you could even, if you wanted to, set up your own sort of alert. So just by adding in these columns, and you can create your own calculated columns. So you could actually have a task, for example, change color. If it's within a week of going past its deadline or something like that, you could have the task change color. So you can do all sorts of fancy stuff with that. But deadlines, I absolutely love. And as I said earlier, I have gone around the world and training project managers on the use of MS Project. And I'm trying to remember if I ever met a single person who had seen deadlines before. No, I don't think I ever met someone who knew about deadlines. But they're really great. So they are really great. To remove my deadline, I can just come in here and remove it from there by just deleting that date. Or I could, of course, double click and go into that advanced tab and again, change the date in there. Okay. All right. Let's have a quick chat about constraints then, because this is a really common thing. I'm just going to hide that column. This is a really common thing that I see on people's schedules, and this is people add constraints without realizing they're adding constraints, and what they do as well is it means that you get lots of error messages. So you get lots of prompts from the scheduling engine going, I don't understand what you're trying to do, because you're adding in conflicting constraints. So what is a constraint? A constraint is a way that you're saying to project, you can move this task in one direction but not the other. Okay, so at the moment I have every task has a constraint on it at the moment. I have a constraint of as soon as possible. So the constraint of as soon as possible means that if something changes around the duration or my resourcing, something changes and a task needs to move, project, you can move that task. Just make sure it happens as soon as possible. So that means it can move it to go later, or it can move it to come earlier. So if you watch this task 1D, so have a look at this task 1D here. Let's just actually change the color of that one so you can see it. Let's have a look at the middle color. We'll make it a nice red color so you can see it. So if you just keep your eye on that red one there. So let's say that my task 1A actually only takes 5 days. Can you see it moved in? So it moves in. What I'll do is I will just change, actually it's just change that and come back to a day scale. And sorry, I just need to move that thing out of the way so I can, whoops, oh, what am I doing? Sorry, I'm being a numpty. Put on a day scale. And again, I'm going to highlight this task. I'm going to say scroll to task so you can see it. Okay, so you can see that there. Okay, so now if I change this to being 5 days, you see it makes it start earlier. And if I change this one to being 10 days, it makes it start later. So that's saying that I'm allowing project to schedule that wherever it wants to, because it's got a constraint type of as soon as possible. There are 8 constraint types: as soon as possible, as late as possible, start no earlier than, start no later than, finish no earlier than, finish no later than, must start on and must finish on. Gosh, can you tell I've done that a few times before? All right, so what can happen is, let's say that I come into here and I say this, I don't think it's going to start on Monday the 8th. After all, I think it's going to start on Wednesday the 10th. Okay. So what I've now is I get a planning wizard. Now in my experience, people don't read these error messages. They just keep picking the different options until it does what they want it to do. Okay. Probably what they want it to do is move the task and keep the link. So they'll just keep pressing different options until they get things. All right. So now I've done that. Let's say that this, again, keep your eye on this one here, is let's say that this duration goes down to 1 day. It doesn't change the start date on here, because I've told project this particular task here, you cannot make it start any earlier. You can make it start later. So if we change that one to 20 days, we can make it start later. What you can't do is make it start earlier than when I said. So if you change the start date or the finish date on a task, you are adding a constraint. And I can tell constraints because I get a little icon here. So I can see that that is a constraint. And I might change this one to being 16th. And again, I've added in a constraint. Okay. So I see this a lot when I open up somebody's schedule. If your schedule is misbehaving, it's probably got constraints on it. If you change the start and the finish date, you are taking away project's ability to do what project loves to do, which is schedule. Okay. And if you find that you've got a lot of these, there are genuine reasons to have constraints. Absolutely. It may be that, for example, a resource can't start until a certain day. It may be that you are having, if you think of a construction project, that your roof tiles are arriving on a certain day. You can't start building the roof until the roof tiles appear. So there may be genuine reasons for a constraint, but most of the constraints I see, there are no genuine reasons. And here's another top tip for you. If you add in a constraint, add a note. So I'm just going to double click on my task here. I'm going to go to my notes field and I'm going to say resource not available until this date. Okay. All right. Let me just move that out of the way again. Say okay. So I've now got a note, which means when I hover over this, not only does it show me there's a constraint, it also tells me why there's a constraint. So anytime I see a constraint, I like to make sure that I also see a note. Okay. All right. So that is your constraints. And guess what? There's a column for that. So I've got two columns. I've got the constraint type and the constraint date. So I've got where start no earlier than, and I've got a finish no earlier than. So that's the constraints that I put on just by changing these start and end dates. Okay, so don't change the start and end dates, change the duration. All right. Now there's a really big thing that we've not talked about, and that is how you update your schedule. Lots of people use the percentage complete method. Percentage complete is actually pretty meaningless. What does halfway through a task mean? Does that mean I'm halfway through the work? I'm halfway through the duration. If I've got a task that I said will take me 2 days worth of effort and I've given myself 2 weeks to do it, if I get to the end of week 1 and I've not started, am I halfway through the task or am I not? Now, again, I know you guys had not been using Project a lot, you're just starting to learn about it, so percentage complete is probably a legitimate way for you to be doing it. Once you move into more advanced, then we start to look at actual and remaining. So what's the actual work I've done so far, and what's the work I have left to do on a task, and what's the actual duration I've spent, and what's the remaining duration. But I don't want to bamboozle you too much, so I'm not going to get into that right now. But I would say to any of you who decide that you want to take project a little bit more seriously and you do want to start using this, particularly if you want to use it to manage costs or to manage your resources, then get in touch with it.training at adelaide.edu.au, and we will run a little session on how you actually update and maintain those tasks. As I say, I don't want to get into it. See, the thing is that where I've got duration written here, that is what I wish that was called, rather than being called duration, I wish that was called current estimated duration, because that's what it is. That duration there is a calculated field. It is your actual duration plus your remaining duration. So the duration that has already passed and the duration that is still to come. As I say, I think that's, I'll just plant that one there. Okay. All right, so that was a super quick zoom through how you could use Project to manage. So use MS Project to manage some project for yourselves. So you've got creation of tasks. So if we can just insert your tasks here to create a milestone. You just change the duration to 0. I created these summary tasks, and I just did that by highlighting the tasks below and using the indent. We linked them together just using the link button here, though you can also use the predecessor column. Of course, you can also use the predecessors tab in your task information. So lots of ways to do things. We then talked about adding in the resources. So we had a look, we realized that this is a task view. We went in and we had a look at the resource view. We added in resources. We then created assignments, and we went in and we had a look at an assignment level view. By the way, this is a task usage. This is resource usage. So essentially this is the same information just flipped in a different way. Okay, so this is done by resource, whereas task was done by task. And then we've had a quick talk about doing your baseline. So it's important to do your baseline so you've got something to compare to. We had a look at adding in deadlines and constraints. Along the way, we talked about the fact that there are notes. So adding in notes, we remember there's a column for everything. So everything's in a column. And we had a look at adding in that project summary task. So that project summary task, that task 0, which is just a summary of your entire project. It's a quick and easy way to see the start and the finish date of your whole project. All sorts of things we haven't covered. Views are really important. So there's a lot of stuff around views here, particularly the fact that we've got tables. So I'm looking at an entry table, but I've got things like I've got my tracking table, which will help me when I'm moving through my project. I'm tracking against my baseline. I've got my work table. So, oh, look, we've got actual and remaining work. So if I'm tracking via work, we have got the summary table as well, which has got my percentages on it. So there's all sorts of different things, different views. I can also do a split view. So I've got my task. Oh gosh, we didn't even get into the task forms, did we? But I've also got things like I've got my, I can split my view so I can have those usage views on the same view as my task view. We didn't get into updating at all. As I say, for now, guys, you can do that percentage, but don't let any of the project managers I've ever trained tell you I said that. And yeah, we had a look. Some of my favorite buttons is zoom to entire project and also zoom to individual task as well. So I like those so much, I've got them on my quick access toolbar. And I think that's as much as I can tell you about that. We haven't even got into the beautiful reports that you can get in 2013. Oh my word! And my absolute top tip. If you're using Project 2013, you should be fine. If you're using Project 2010, they introduced a new type of task, which is the manually scheduled task, and they were so pleased with it, they made it the default. Now, fortunately, they've changed it back to the default being an auto-scheduled tasks, but you see here it says new tasks are auto-scheduled. Please make sure your tasks are auto-scheduled, not manually scheduled. Manually scheduled tasks, you'll see they'll have a little pin by them rather than being auto-scheduled. They are a nightmare, so don't ever use manually scheduled tasks. They will appear differently. Gosh, because I've forgotten that's not even a thing anymore in 2013. Let me just have a look. Is it in here? Manually scheduled, yes, I thought it would be. See how that looks different? And it's manually scheduled, so essentially it doesn't move. Yeah, it doesn't move. Because you've told projects you want to manually schedule it yourselves. So just and there is a column for that. What that one calls task type, I think, task mode. There it is, yeah. So that's something worth looking at as well, particularly if you're picking up somebody else's schedule. It's just to make sure that everything is auto-scheduled, or you're in for, again, a whole heap of pain. All right. So, do we have any questions? I'll just launch a quick poll and you can let me know if there are any questions. Let me just launch that poll. And just talk about the next set of webinars. So we've not planned them out yet. So if you do have anything you'd particularly like to see, please email us at it.training@adelaide.edu.au and we will endeavour to include those things. So if there's anything in particular you'd like to see, I think it's about time we did a Word one. So we'll have a look at a good topic for that next one in Word. And then, Excel ones are always fun too, so we'll probably stick one of those in. But if you've got any ideas, please let us know. Okay. Great, I'm just going to draw that poll to a close in 3, 2, 1. Excellent, that mostly met expectations. Oh, we have a question. Okay, do you need to install additional tools in MS Word for this MS project? MS Project is an entirely different product. So MS Project is a different product in the same way that you've got MS Word, you've got Outlook, you've got Excel, and so on. So MS Project is part of the Office suite, but it's not part of the standard suite. So in a standard Office install, you'll have access to Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Outlook, I'm pretty sure. Gosh, they keep changing the rules. So Project is a separate product. I'm not sure if it's available through, I hope you're all aware that if you have a free Office 365 subscription through having a .edu account. So if you go to the Tech Services website, there's instructions there on how to install your free copy of Office on up to 5 devices. So that's Office 365. It may be included in that, it may not. If you need access to Project, you can also contact the service desk. there is a cost involved, though. I think that's why I'm not sure if it's available through the Office 365 subscription. Okay. See if we've got any other questions. So if you are frantically typing a question, then please just raise your hand. Otherwise, I'm going to bring the webinar to a close. All right. Well, in that case, folks, thanks for coming. Sorry if I keep shifting the webinar around, but hopefully it'll settle into this Tuesday morning. Friday afternoons weren't working for anybody, frankly. So yeah, hopefully this Tuesday morning slot works for you guys. Okay, and we will see you a week on Tuesday. See you in a fortnight.